Hi everyone, I'm Kashvi. I'm going to be the moderator for this panel. We're going to talk about preserving privacy in the age of AI and what our incredible panelists are doing here. Hamza, unfortunately, isn't going to make it, but I'm still excited to pick all of your brains on, what you're working on right now and the role that privacy is playing in it, especially in a world now where it's kind of hard to determine whether something's real or not. How do we use AI to verify things? Are we doing it on-chain? Are we doing it off-chain? What's happening? We're going to dig into each and every single one of these pillars. But before we get into that, I would love for all of you to do a quick round of introductions, starting with Lasha.
Oh, me straight away? Okay, hi everyone. We're working at Rarimo with the verifiable privacy-preserving identity, which might sound like a boring identity stuff, but if you mix it up with zero-knowledge proofs, some magic from a cryptography, and especially in the realm of AI world and repressive systems, then it becomes a pretty interesting stuff.
Over to you.
Hi, I'm Vatsal. I work with Flock. We essentially do AI training, but in a privacy manner.
Hello. Hi, I'm Eric. I work on self.xyz. Also trying to solve identity through privacy-preserving methods, but purely focused right now on passport data. So if you have a passport and you have an NFC chip on it, not everybody does. You're able to verify it and then reveal just a little bit, which I think is going to be helpful to the conversation.
That's very cool. I'm a big fan of NFC chips myself. My nails have an NFC chip inside them. So if you click on it, you get a link to my social platforms. So that's really cool. Let's talk, all of you here are building user-facing products at the end of the day. A lot of it, is used by retail and your consumers. So how do you include privacy as a feature of something that's that user-facing, but also technically not because it is public-facing? So what does privacy really mean in the context of what you're building at Rarimo?
Maybe we mix so others start.
Sounds good. Open to all, whoever wants to take it.
So the question is, how do you
preserve privacy in the context of what you're building?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is we let people share parts of their information. And it's actually one of my beliefs that people should have control of that information. So in the current day, you usually skim through the end user license agreement, get to the bottom and quickly jump in. But for us, we have people make sure if they're revealing their name, if they're revealing their date of birth, be very clear. And I think it's important to design for people who not everybody is literate, but also not everybody is 100% literate. So designing in a way where if it looks like you're going to give away all your information, try to scare them a little bit, like, hey, don't give it all. So I think that's one idea.
Disclaimer. How about you?
Yeah, so we do a brand of AI training called federated learning, which inherently is privacy preserving, because how federated learning works is, say, someone has some data and the other person has some data, and the data is useful for the model training. But the data does not go out and does not need to go out. Individuals can train their own models and just share those model weights or gradients out, and then you combine them in some form and shape, and that's how privacy is preserved. We take it a notch further, wherein in traditional FL, you still need a centralized server which gathers all those gradients out. We're doing a form wherein it is P2P, so peer-to-peer gradient merging. Yeah, and that's how it's completely private.
I like that. Privacy is an inherent feature. That's a really cool way to look at it.
So the question is, how do we use privacy, right?
Yeah.
We just use it and we don't talk about it. Because at the end of the day, the reality is that privacy as a product is not something that, I mean, we all agree upon, but for privacy to be productized, there's a lot we need to do. So our approach is basically trying to find the value from an application perspective, from a use case perspective that embeds privacy per se. So such use case, as an example, could not exist without a privacy. So we go after the use cases that are like sometimes pretty controversial, with like anonymous voting, for example, or we go out for like preserving the certain information that you don't want publicly to be shared, and we just roll back, delivering first the value of, I don't know, like freedom of expression or speech or like protesting something, and then privacy is something no one even like questions, and that's how we deliver it. So privacy is a kind of must-have ingredient, but it's not the value that drives a product on the market.
That's a very good answer. To follow up on that, what are some of the most compelling enterprise-based privacy use cases that you've seen at Rarimo?
I would not say enterprise use cases, but we've done a couple of like political use cases with the anonymous voting in the countries I won't name right now. You can just like Google. It's called Freedom Tool.
Freedom Tool.
Yeah.
What's the URL?
Freedomtool.org. Not gonna name any of this. If you're curious, just take a look. That has been quite interesting use cases, the use of like verifiable identity merged with privacy preserving ways. Other than that, on an enterprise level, right, I do think that there are like certain, I don't know, even like the messaging or information flow that needs to be contained within the company and corporation. So like encryption and privacy are a must-have rails. Maybe like going forward as we're into the ZK AI stuff, of course, the privacy aspect in terms of like feeding and inputting the certain data that are not publicly available and should not be within a corporation, within the sectors like healthcare, within the sectors like big pharma and stuff, it will require privacy preserving rails and the training models that are per se built on privacy. And other than that, yeah, there are tons of use cases.
Very cool. Would either of you also like to comment on enterprise-based use cases for privacy that you've seen work?
Sure. Yeah. So I think for us, what enterprise means to me is very large websites. So with identity, with ZK especially, there's an opportunity now to use all this technology that we have. Similar to what he said, like privacy is just part of it. And you kind of can take it for granted, but extending that, I think, to rather than just Web3 to all of the internet. And so what I mean by like large websites, I mean websites everybody has heard of and used. I think it benefit from the tech we're building. I think it'll apply also to AI, but in general, the ability to verify people's information is real, that they're real people. And providing that is just something that doesn't really exist right now, aside from hiring a third party to check a bunch of information. So just large-scale use of this information, I think, is very valuable, not just enterprise level, but across the entire internet. And it's finally here.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think enterprise has been one of the biggest focus for us, for sure. For example, healthcare. We work with a bunch of organizations like NHS, Manchester Eye Hospital, and others, for example, on glucose detection, tuberculosis detection via iris scans, etc. Then you have applications in finance where you have, say, private order books, and you can't really share data across order books. And then you want to build an agent or a model which can take advantage of that data. So yeah, FL helps over there. And then government is also a sector that we're focusing on. We recently, 2 days back, announced a collaboration with Alibaba Cloud, their AI division called Quen, to train SLMs again in a privacy manner. So I think enterprises are waking up to the privacy aspect now.
Oh, and I forgot, like the most basic, we need privacy for the on-chain transactions with the cryptocurrencies. I think like we now all agree, especially on the enterprise level or like into P2P, that like pseudo privacy introduced by the Bitcoin is a bit like long gone, and a lot of systems are like tracing how I spend my money, and that should not be the case. So I think it will be definitely absorbed by the everyday crypto users.
What would you say are some of the challenges that you experience from an infrastructure side to sort of, run your protocols on the basis of privacy? Because it's not easy to build that infrastructure. What are the common hurdles and how do you navigate it?
So I can talk a little bit about building what we're trying to build. The hardest part is, although mobile phones have increased in capacity and power, it still can't do a lot of the ZK work that we want to do on device. That's a big deal. The next part is if you move that off device into the cloud, if you're using like a TE or trusted execution environment, even those are super constrained. And so there's a lot of limitations, but I think given enough time, maybe 2 more years, I think the amount of things we could process would be much larger, but still there's a lot of constraints, and a lot of it is driven purely by how much compute power we have. And that's just on the application side. Beyond that, there's others too.
There was this one paradox that one of my team members told me about. It's called Jevons paradox. And it's that, if people have access to more compute, they're going to want even more access to it, which leads to a high cost. And that's obviously expensive for protocols that are trying to, build ZK proofs on chain. So I completely understand where you're coming from. How about you?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure if that paradox is applied to the privacy, because users are like, they expect it to be either, or like they don't care about it. So it's not this kind of steam engine type of need.
So it's
growth.
more black and white, you'd say.
Yeah. So, and in terms of like, what are the limitations from an infrastructural perspective? And I completely share that vision. It's not about like what type of cryptography do you use, or like how do we distribute the keys to process the certain personal data among the NPCs and stuff. I believe the ultimate formula of privacy, especially with the private data, is the device level client side processing. If any data, especially the personal one, whether it's my passport, whether it's my face, whether it's my, like even certain information about my association or graph, leaves my device and is processed somewhere else, it could have an implication. Bad one. It's not about somebody like colluding to just like reveal the data and like gather that information. But there's a lot of friction in terms of those systems not being censorship resistant. And when you're building and when you're transacting and when you're attaching, especially the private information of yours, to a wider systems and the use, you don't want that to be handled by a third party. And client-side processing of personal information, unfortunately, today is limited. We run into hardware limitations, and we as well run into the zero-knowledge proof limitations and the proof sizes that can be generated on these devices. There has been a lot of good work done by our team, your team as well, and we've collaborated on passports with Open Passport back in the days, and I think we're getting there. I don't believe into interim solutions where we can delegate privacy aspect and processing to an MPC networks or trusted execution environments, and then hope that certain actors don't have access to it, or they won't get banned in certain jurisdictions. So I go for the ultimate architectural privacy rails, even within these limitations, even with the time delays of generating proof locally, but in the end, reaching the ultimate goal of privacy-preserving tech on the client side.
I love what you said. I think one of the biggest things I've seen in the world, especially in AI, is who would have thought the progress would have been made so quickly? But what drove that progress? I think the same thing can apply to what's happening with ZK, and I know a lot of smart people are working really hard on it. As long as we contribute those, you know what I mean? As long as one of us doesn't hold it private and secret, then we can all benefit to the point where, an Android phone in India can run the same proofs as iOS 27, 3 years from now. So.
I think I also agree from the AI side. I think as long as you can build SLMs which are capable of running on phones, not just ZK proofs, but just put those SLMs on your phone and you have the power of, say, GPT-4o or the others on your phone, you're as private as possible.
Are there common misconceptions that people in the industry have about what it takes to preserve privacy using AI, like some myths that people believe in that you want to bust?
It's a hard question because
that's what I'm here to ask.
Because in a way, I do look at the industry and where we trying to bring in first more like this distributed computational power to AI. And then I think on top of it, then there is this kind of privacy as a feature that, we're going to need on top of it. I might sound negative, but I believe that in a way we have lost the war in terms of the input privacy. So all these data models have been already centralized. They've been learning on our public information for years and years. And now reversing this and trying to no, we need privacy in terms of this learning data and stuff. I think it's a gone days. So my frontier where I see that there's a potential is on the output side. So maybe now with the zero knowledge proofs, with the blockchain, the distribution stuff, we can have some impact on the output of the data and how do we regulate what's plausible, what's not, what's privacy requires the privacy out of these models and try to apply and win the race before it's too late as well. But as mentioned, the AI race is so quick that sometimes I'm seriously worried about our industry catching up and really building up and offering something, an alternative path towards decentralization and privacy momentum.
Yeah, even one other example of AI specifically being used to trick people is, I talk about passports, so people can make fake ones. You can't break the ones that have an SC chip, but there's a lot of countries like India that don't have it. There's a lot of countries in Africa that don't have it. They probably won't have it for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And these systems are based off of real people verifying information that looks kind of right. And, so the AI is starting to get really good if it's already tricking us on Instagram and tricking us with content, I think it's being used also to trick people for a lot of real business use cases. And it's, I think, only going to get harder to tell. So it's important that we're having this conversation.
So what exactly is the solution that we're building to sort of mitigate that?
Well, one of the reasons I think ZK is important here is you can verify and you can prove something is what it says it is, versus right now, if I look online, I can't even tell if a tweet from someone I know is written written by a bot or not. There's going to be a world where all of us have bots doing work. I already have 2 doing work right now, and I think I could have another dozen in a couple months. You know what I mean? There's so much of that. So how do you trace that back to a real person? I think is going to be important. And then how do you, once you trace that back to the real person, how do you verify that this was created but associated with this person? I don't know if everybody's going to want to do that. I don't know if people are going to want to do that, but I do think it's one way to help prevent that.
To build on the example that you shared of Instagram, for instance, that, okay, people are, falling for stuff that they shouldn't be. How does ZK help? What would a real life ZK example implementation use case look like to sort of prevent the problem with Instagram that you talked about of deep fakes and everything that we're seeing? What would it just, yeah.
I think okay, it's very rudimentary now, and kind of like what Lasha was saying, how privacy is kind of a given after a certain point. Right now, you know how you have like a verified check mark?
Yeah.
So that's going to be really important in general. But then how do you know that that's the verified device? And then how do you know if that was a verified, like, did they post that where they should have been? Like, all the metadata around that, I think, needs to be wrapped in a better product user interface that you just know real person, real location, real device, real point in time, and verify all that. And then what you see is what you see. So I think it's going to be more in the background because nobody wants to see, like on a web browser, you remember how like if you weren't on a secure page, it would show red. And then if you were on a secure page, it would show green or a little lock mark.
Yeah.
Really simple stuff like that, I think is going to become more prevalent in consumer applications with the help of ZK.
How many years away do you think we are from seeing this being a reality on the bigger platforms?
I think if AI, the use of AI agents, I think people are already thinking about it now, but the agent usage will keep doubling or 10xing to the point where you don't even know if someone's real. I think we're almost there, and that's when these features will have to be introduced. So, but
Yeah.
Can I extend on that?
Yes, of course.
I think I want to extend on that I think we have like weeks to solve this problem. Because especially with the ZK and identity part and with AIs, their speed is so high, and then we wait for okay, how do we gonna solve an identity or deepfake problem on a global level? And most of the people is gonna say oh, there's gonna be a regulation, government chime in and stuff. And unfortunate or fortunate, I don't know which side of the equation you are, but imagine there has been 40 years of digital revolution going, and governments have not been able to solve cross-border identity signatures for now. And we don't have a system where I can sign on my end and another person in another jurisdiction and to have a legal tender. And that has not been solved for decades. And now expecting that this identity problem solved at the regulation level, cross-border in this crazy race, it's a kind of waste of time. So ZK builders, identity builders, I think we're into this rush that we need to make something workable and people on board with that vision before it gets internalized by the corporations. Because if the identities, if this deepfake, if the internal policies gets internalized by AIs, we end up in the most centralized world we can ever imagine, and we just dependent. And does not matter what we're gonna invent then, optimize zero knowledge proof or client-side things and stuff. Those infras will be this kind of so alien to whatever our visions we have, and you will never see the real world daylight. So I'm a worried person, and I want this for us to be quick in solving the certain things.
So I had a question. So why do you need sort of ZK for that? Why not just metadata? Like your traditional metadata to verify things. Why does that not solve most of the things, if not all?
It depends on the data type, but for example, if we're proving the identity, right? So passport is an example, or a photo out of the passport, it means that I need to verify myself, or I'm that person within the database, or the hash belongs to me without disclosing my personal information. And zero knowledge proof is used on this kind of client-side processing on device to prove that I'm the owner or I'm the person on this side.
Yeah, no, I was talking about more on the lines of Instagram and then deepfakes around Instagram more than digital identity.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you an example. An Instagram photo that was, for example, published by somebody, and I need to take it down. So there's a take it down policy, and I need to prove that it is me, the person in the photo, that asks that request. And I'm not sharing my face with you, I'm just like providing you a zero knowledge proof that a person requesting a takedown is the person in the photo. And that's where zero knowledge proof come in.
So it's like when you're doing the verification, your photos don't get sent to the Instagram team. They're just verified using ZK, and no one has access to those photographs, your personal photographs that you took on your device. Is that right? Do I get it correctly? Okay, awesome.
Exactly.
Great. Well, we're heading towards time, so I would love if you guys could share some closing thoughts on what it takes to preserve privacy, because all three of you are doing such different things that I want to give everyone 2 minutes to just, give your TLDR on preserving AI, preserving privacy using AI, and what you're doing differently and how users can connect with you.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay, so for me at self.xyz, we want to be able to help people prove that they're real using things like their passport. Do it in a way where they have control. I think control is really important. I think having agency on what you share and what you don't is really important. And then beyond that, I think once you have a method, like Lasha had said, that you can prove and verify this information, it unlocks so many different things. The amount of value you can give to a new user into a DeFi application you're building can be much higher. You can, I think, if you're deciding like who to spend time on, you would probably want to focus on the real users and not the bots, unless the bots are making money. But ultimately, I think our focus is trying to get more people around the world verifying that they're real people, so that this dream that we all have of having 1 billion people on blockchain can happen. And it can happen. If he's saying we got to rush, I agree. If we don't do it now, we're going to be fighting through and wading through so much of a mess. And I think that the way that we can get through this is by using ZK, proving, verifying, and disclosing that information, but through the control of each person. Yeah.
And the role of the passport in that?
No, I think the role of passport is eventually everybody will have a better passport with more NFC chips, not in our nails, but in our passport pages. But there needs to be solutions for folks that will never get one. There's only like 800 million of them, and there's 8.8 billion people. So how do we solve for the 90%? That's what we're working on.
Yeah, so how do you preserve privacy? I think essentially don't share your data outside. I think that's the simplest answer ever.
Can you find
it's working?
Speak into it.
Yeah. So the simplest answer is don't share your data outside. Ideally, do not share with closed source models what you don't want to be public, or at least be included in the training data set, because they're definitely using it. I think verify what open source models you're using too, because I think there's enough research being done around that to know that open source models can behave in a completely different manner, even if you have safeguards and guardrails when you ask for a specific thing. So I think do open source.
So besides being worried about all the future and upcoming changes that is happening, we're working on this identity aspect. I think it's a foundation, especially passports. Like, there's no other way in this world other than that passport document to prove your age, your name, your citizenship. It is this kind of a basic who you are in a physical world. And actually what Self is doing, and we've done experiment with passports as well a lot, is this kind of vampire attacking the system of the identity and bringing it into a cryptography and making it privacy preserving way. I think that's the right way to go forward. And by building these layers and layers of verifiable interactions, identities, and the systems adjacent to the AIs is the right way future. It's just that we need to upbuild and provide the solutions much faster to be ready-made for the deployment, to keep the balance. the balance between a verifiable, auditable, and this kind of responsible infrastructure in the form of the zero knowledge proofs and blockchains, and a centralized power machines in the AIs. And if we find that balance, it's going to be good. If we don't find the balance, it's going to be
The
good
end
for
of the
some
world.
people, but bad for the others.
100%. How can people in our audience connect with you and learn more about what you guys are building, what you guys are doing? Maybe feel free to shout out your website, your Twitter handles.
Yeah, I'll just go quick. Self.xyz. Eric at self.xyz.
Vatsal?
Flog.io. Hit us up anywhere. I think I'm online most of the time. So yeah.
Just come talk to me or go to rarimo.com. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. This has been an incredible conversation about preserving privacy in the age of AI. Hope everyone derived some value out of it, and just huge shout out to our speakers for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.